is about music and all things music for your intro and outro. And I don't know how, and maybe I guess if you end up recording your own ads at some point, we've done that where we record an ad like a, like a radio DJ does sometimes, host of the show records an ad for a sponsor and you lay some music behind it. So this is going to apply to all of that today.
Yeah. And, it sounds like music is going to be like the fun choice. And then you dive into it and find it just a little bit harder than you expected to find something you like.
It is.
And so, and it's hard to describe what you want. So that's kind of where we want to go with how to search a little bit and try to think about styles that fit you. It's not as easy as it sounds. It sounds like, ooh, this is going to be the fun, easy part. But yeah.
And I mean, it can be fun, but the frustration part comes with, all the issues regarding music licensing. And there are just a huge amount of laws.
They make it way too complicated.
It's the way the law is.
I know, but it's too complicated.
You can't do anything about it. There is one way to get around it. We're going to go over that today. Yep. But it's complicated. So let's talk about in general, just so in case you don't know, and I'm sure some of you do who are watching this, but in case you don't know, let's talk about the issues around music rights and licensing. Music is one of the most heavily regulated copyright realities in the world, in particular in the United States, but also in Europe and in most modern countries. You cannot just take your favorite music and take a clip of it. If it's a published music by some musician, they call them an author as well. You cannot just take any music you like and, record a clip of it and use it in your podcast. You can't even, if you have a retail store. Tracy used to have a retail store 10 plus years ago, I guess 12 years ago. And it's been a while. Anyway, she had a retail store for tween girls and there was a lot of music that was played because there were parties, and you actually have to, as a retail store, have the rights to play that music because you're playing it in a commercial environment and you have to pay royalties to the owners of that music. And there are
you couldn't just put CDs on. You had to subscribe to a service.
And there are plenty of services. I mean, there's a whole industry built around that for retail. All the music you hear when you go into Macy's or Nordstrom's or Best Buy or anywhere that you hear on their speakers, just ambient music playing, is usually streaming from a service that is specifically providing music that they've paid for and got the rights to pay to an organization that then there are a couple organizations that filter all the money and divide it up among all the people who actually have the rights to the music who get paid for it. And of course,
so at least you don't have to calculate that.
Yeah, you don't have to deal with any of that. But if you were ever to use music on a podcast, which is a broadcast situation, it's a commercial use, whether you're making money on your podcast or not, it's a public playing of someone else's music. You have to have the rights to do that.
Right.
And you do not want to get on the wrong side of a copyright dispute with your music for your podcast.
Right.
It is just not worth your time.
But the point is that there's these organizations and their job is to make sure that the rights are enforced and they're out there on behalf of their members who pay money to be members. And it's important to them. So that's really why you think, oh, but my little podcast, who's going to notice? Well, it's on iTunes. They will notice.
They will. They'll find it some way. And actually these organizations, ASCAP and BMI, part of their job is to police it, is to police the proper, use and the proper, I guess, rights of the music that is under their control. So they're going to go and find it. It's their job to do it. The artist is never going to go searching everything. Oh, well, that musician will never come and find my podcast on iTunes or find my website with the track player. It's not their job to do it. It's somebody else's job to do it.
Well, and also there's a lot of sites now, like YouTube has this and some of the other sites, but they have they have an automated system that trolls videos and audio files and looks for matches to ones that are already in their system as a as someone who's filed a complaint before, or into libraries, like they cross match with libraries, which some of these royalty-free libraries we're going to talk about. And so they match those, and when they find one and no attribution is made, they shut them down. So it's already happening in a technological sense. So So let's stay on the right side of the way to do it, and let's find some good music that you're happy with. So I think we should talk a little bit about styles in music. I mean, I think that, you know, it's to find what you're looking for that matches you. I mean, music is a cue. It's a hint at what you're about and who and what you like, and you know, kind of your spirit and your passion that might come through also could be a little hint coming through from the music. So today we just listened to this morning Athena Rosette's music for her new podcast, and then she's consulted with us before on what she's doing here, and so she sent us her music this morning, and it's a little preview music, and the minute I listened to it, I was like, first off, it has all the great components of good music for the opening to a podcast, but it's her. The music is just really her. So that's it's perfect.
Yeah, I think it's also ideal just from the tone of the music, the speed of the music, just knowing her and her subject matter, but also the level of music. It's not overpowering. I mean, I think it's a good contrast. Right. It's a I can play it.
Play it over the microphone.
I'll play it over the mic here. Let's see if I can.
So you hear how it starts out low, which means you could really have a voiceover on that. It's got a little beat in it, which you could end or cut. And then the other beat came from the computer.
Your phone, because I had to turn the sound on. But anyway, you can hear how you can easily talk a voiceover over this music. The music will still command your attention, but it won't overpower the voice. So I think it's a really good choice for her. Okay. So and actually there's
it has
a
little
track.
Bit of mystery and all of that going on that fits her podcast, and I think it's great.
I do too. I think, you know, from a structure perspective, from just mechanically, not even thinking of the style of music, but mechanically, I mean, it which is sort of a crude way to put it, but I mean, I think it would function well as an intro music. There's a big track, a long track where you can choose a clip, the length that you just need it to for whatever your voiceover is, or if you're not doing a voiceover, just however much you want to stop. There's a natural, nice beat where there's a pause in the music, and you could time that to be the end of your music intro and then go into, you know, what you're going to talk about. So very well done. Good choice.
Yeah. So one of the things as we're going to go through these websites to search for is to make sure you have probably a minute and a half at least in length of your clip. Some clips are really short. Some of them have like 10, 20, 30-second clips. And while you think, oh, my intro is only going to be 15 seconds, it'll be fine. The reality is that sometimes you might want a little choice in where you cut the clip from. So try to choose a track, a music piece that you find that to be about a minute and a half long. I think then it gives you a lot of choices on where to cut.
They usually give you a few options on a lot of the websites that we're going to talk to you about today. They usually give you some options where they have shorter clips and longer clips, and you're going to end up buying the rights to a piece of music. And then, you know, you always want to get the full clip, like Tracy said, to give you the options. Now, another thing I want to say is there are some websites out there that have completely free music that's what they call in the public domain. So they won't cost you anything. That's the positive aspect of them. The not so positive aspect of them is they're really lousy pieces of music.
They're really
common, and I would not recommend them. I don't think they will do your podcast a lot of credit. So no matter what your podcast is. So what's the next step? Well, the next step is there are many websites, and we're just going to show you like 3 or 4 of them that are options, but there are more. Literally, this is just Google royalty-free music. Now, I want to make a distinction. Royalty-free does not mean free.
Yeah, this is a royalty free means that you just don't have to pay residuals every single time that it's played. You're paying a fee instead. So think about it like royalty-free photographs. We do this all the time on Corbis or 123RF, any one of those websites that you might buy a photograph that you might use on your website or you might use in your social media. I use them all the time in my articles for ink. And when you buy them, you pay a one-time little fee for them. That's difference. You're paying a fee, but not ongoing royalties every time it's viewed.
Yeah, so that's the big distinction. So you are, and you're never owning any of this music outright. This is music that other people can find, they can use on their podcast as well, or their radio commercial, or whatever it is they're going to use it for. And you're buying a license to use it, and it's not an exclusive license. So that's the point I want to make here. You're one of many people that maybe have a license to it, and you're gonna buy a license, and a license can cost you anywhere from usually around $50 on the low end to $150, even, or even more on the high end. And it depends. You have to buy rights based on how you're going to use it, and different sites have different license options and rules, and you have to read and figure out the one that applies to you.
Yeah, sometimes they call it broadcast media. That's what you are. You're in broadcast media technically because you're broadcasting a podcast. Some of them have different language that they use for how they characterize it.
Yeah, the one I found that's the most common is that I think applies on most of these to podcasting is they say for use on the internet. And that it was the most applicable one that I could find. Unfortunately, was not the most expensive license either, which is good. If you be careful that you're not choosing a selection that's meant for, being on television
or on radio, like real,
over the
air radio. Yeah, they're much more expensive.
Right. So, podcasts, I mean, they can get to be very, very popular and get a lot of plays, but it's not like it's being put out there on the airwaves for anybody who wants to just take it and listen to it. You have to intentionally go find a podcast and download it, which is a little bit different. And so I find that for use on the internet, or, sometimes for use in presentations and things like that are going to be downloadable on the internet, things like that apply more. And some may actually have a for podcasting, option. And then of course, that's going to apply to you.
Yeah. Cause they're sort of catching up with what it's being used for very frequently now. So anyway, let's show them some of the sites.
So what we're talking about here is a site called MusicBed, and you can see, right on there, this is just their homepage. They have a lot of different categories here right off the top that, ambient, blues, cinematic, electronic, hip hop, indie, pop, post rock.
There's some sites that have like even broader categories than that. There might be like comedic and just more terms than you would think of it as a genre of music.
Right. So, if you want to go and browse music, you have different filters that and sorting options. And then.
So you don't want non-commercial use if you're going to have ads on your site.
Right. So you select, whoops, I just did it twice. Yeah. You select commercial. Now TV, film, corporate, whatever. I mean, so every site has a different way of doing it. And you're going to end up spending a lot of time going through different music and hitting play and listening to the clips and seeing what you like and what you don't. Ultimately, this comes down to a choice of taste, and it's your own. This is your podcast. It's your design, and you need to figure that out. So this is going to take you some time to do.
Yeah. I mean, when we do it for clients, we typically spend a couple of hours, coming up, and and we've already forced them to narrow their options in terms of their styles they like. And so, yeah, it's not the fastest thing you'll do.
Right. Okay. So here's another one called Premium Beat. This is a particularly good one, and we've gotten quite a bit of music. You can see also they have sound effects that you can,
which is kind of cool. Like you wanted rain sounds or, just more. We put in a sound effect of the 3D printer printing, but we, we taped that ourselves. We recorded that ourselves.
Right. And they can be, so these sound effects, those can be good for transitions and segues from one part to another. Royalty free most popular royalty-free music was what they come up with, but then you can go into genre, mood, artist,
Has a lot of choices.
You got a lot of choices. And then what you'll hear, which also, I don't know if you noticed when we played that little bit of Athena Rosette's music over the mic here, was that a lot of times there is the equivalent of a watermark in the music. And if you ever seen a photograph,
preview, they say
or
that throughout it.
Premium Beat just several times throughout the music will say premiumbeat.com, and just keep saying their own name, so that it's really a stamp, so you know where the music came from. Because guess what? It is actually possible to play their music clips over their site and have a digital recorder set up that you can record that music just by playing it over your web browser. So you could actually take that music and use it. Now, that wouldn't be legal, that wouldn't be right, but you could do it. So they put this watermark in it so that you don't get to download the real music until you've paid for it.
Yeah, so you see there, they also have short, 15, 30, 60. You can see that the seconds, the number of seconds.
Right.
So they have the different versions of that. And so you can see over there, it says buy for $49. So they kind of have a flat rate amount on this, and it doesn't matter as long as you're in it, or no.
Actually, they have a couple different licenses as well. The most typical one is $49 there, but they have also.
Why don't you add that to cart and let's see what it looks like.
Well, here, let's click on the item first, and then you can see. Now, different music will have different things. Some artists will just have a flat rate of $49, and maybe this is one of those. But other artists have a couple of different licensing options, that tiered license. So, I mean, if I can add it to cart and then, say I want to check out. And so standard license and premium license, and the premium license is $200. So you need to actually look up, and
there's a question mark right next to it.
Yeah, you can actually look here, and they tell you is your based. Then it's $49. If you're working on a non-web advertisement or revenue-generating content, license will cover your single project in perpetuity. So here is an example of where, if it's a non-revenue generating thing. So if you're doing a podcast, you're not making any money on the podcast right now, I think you can get away with the $49 license right now. But eventually, if you start advertising on your podcast, you would need to come back and purchase another license of $199 for that.
So that means you'll pay $49 and then you'll pay $199 because they won't credit you.
Right. So you'll be paying $49 extra, but you're not paying $150 extra now. Maybe a year or a year and a half before you need to. To me, that paying that extra $49, I would probably start with $49, and then if I'm making money on my podcast with ads, I can afford to double dip and pay that extra $49 later.
You just need to remember that you have to do that.
Right.
That's something.
So that's the Premium Beat. I think it's got very high quality royalty-free music.
And they're easy to sort and search on because they have a lot of categories.
And
some of these other ones are harder to sort on.
I'm just going to show you a couple more. Bensound. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer here. The bottom line is you're just trying to find the music that's going to work for you. Nothing else really matters. Doesn't matter what site it comes from, because no one's ever going to know where it came from or care where it came from.
I like the image on Jazzy French down there.
Yeah, it's they have very interesting cover art that they've put into their site to help paint the picture, if you will, of what the music sounds like, which is a very interesting thing. So and again, they have their licensing area. You want to go and check that out. Shutterstock, I was surprised to learn, I didn't realize they're a stock image company, but they also have stock music. So if you already have a Shutterstock account that you use in graphics, then you may very well want to check out their music. But here's the thing, not every site is going to have the same royalty-free music. In fact, they're all trying to have unique content to get you to, want to come to their site. So if you're not finding what you like, go try another site, because they've got a lot of different stuff. And then I was going to show you the one site. This is the one that Athena Rosette used, stock music site, ultimate royalty-free music. There, again, no right or wrong answer.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of the uglier sites, but they have a lot of music in there.
And like we said, we really liked Athena Rosette's choice. So no issues there whatsoever. So those are, we're going to have links to those sites, and they're not the only ones. I'm not going to put a whole web page of different links. You can Google that if you want to, but these ones that we showed you will have linked on our page underneath the video. But let's talk for a moment about the other option. The other option, if you're really not finding what you like, or you, for whatever reason, your podcast, you want to be really unique. You don't want to have somebody who might listen to your podcast trip on another podcast that uses the same music. And I think it would be kind of rare that that would happen, but it's
because there's so many choices out there.
Certainly it is possible.
I mean, that's just one reason to dive a little deeper than the first page of options. Because when you go to the most popular options, they're typically the most popular because people are lazy and they just were like, oh, let me pick some music. Oh, here it is. It's on page 1.
Well, the most popular because more people have bought it too. Yeah. So it's going to be out there more. Now, is that a bad thing? I mean, your voiceover over the music is going to sound different than somebody else's with their voiceover over it. But anyway, some people want something a little different. And the way to do that is to have custom original music created for your podcast. And we did that for our podcast. So that's something to consider. Now, we did a combination of, my father is a musician and he helped us. I sampled some sounds from our 3D printers and he composed that a certain way. But then we had somebody else create custom music layered underneath that. And we paid for that. And we, as Podcast Start Point, also have that resource available. It's not cheap. It costs about $500 to have a custom music created for you. And if you want something really complex, it can be even at most up to $1,000, but typically about $500, you can get a really good quality custom music done for you that is only yours. That's the only thing you're ever going to pay for it. You own the rights to it in perpetuity, and it's completely unique. So
yeah, and one of the things that you want to do is, let's say you have a brother-in-law who can create music and do something for you or whatever. Just make sure that you get it in writing because of the copyright laws. The copyright laws stay with whoever originated it no matter what. You must transfer that. And so at this point you say, I paid for it by fee, I paid them this much money, or I didn't pay them, but they're giving it me full license rights, commercial use for, as long as I want. You make sure you get that in writing, because at some point you may need it. If you start putting ads on your podcast, you may need it to prove that you have commercial use of the music.
Definitely. So personally, I like the idea of custom music. It's not, if you're starting a podcast on a bootstrap and you've paid just $100 or $200 for all your equipment, and you're going to edit your podcast yourself, then maybe spending $500 on custom music is really just not in your budget. That's completely understandable, and that's what these other resources are for. But when you think about, creating original music, which is not an easy thing to do for most of us, a good quality original music for $500, I think is actually not a bad deal in terms of, the cost of things on this earth. But again, it's not for everyone, and it's certainly not necessary.
I think you should give the other sites a shot. I mean, I think you have to work really hard to not, you'd have to really have something very, very specific in mind that you're not finding out there to want custom music. I just think it's a lot more work than, and it's a lot harder to describe to them what you want, just as it is to go and search for it. So I think that that's the really issue there, is that unless you can really communicate exactly what you want and you're not finding it, then it's really not worth custom music to me.
Sure. Well,
the advertisement thing aside, if you're going to have an ad-based site, it makes a lot more sense, because that $200 we saw in there is a relatively cheap one for a commercial license. Some of them are much higher.
Yeah. No, I think it's very reasonable. So anyway, different options for different people. And, some people like the custom music and some don't. So anyway, if you have not done it already, so your homework for today is to go and start searching and finding some music choices that you're considering for your podcast.
That's right.